right, this is, I don't know what this is. This is Cup of Linux, and this is really isn't a news and nonsense show because we don't have Toss here. But Matthew and I've got Matthew with me, and we were having a discussion here on the Cup of Linux Mumble server, and I figured, maybe we ought to record this so that, any opinions, views, and that sort of thing you guys can comment on. Because this is a really hot topic, and today's hot topic is we have a hostage situation, and the Linux kernel is being held at gunpoint. And in a way, it kind of is. Okay, so we've got social justice warriors trying to get people fired from the kernel development teams, and now it appears that kernel developers can just pull their code, deny licensing to the code. Tell me, how does that even work out, Matthew?
I'm not entirely sure legally, but from what I've been reading, it seems that there's some case law that would allow developers to retain license and ownership of their code if they decide to leave a project, because it was never an exclusive contract when they began development in the first place. So it seems like a lot of these developers are using that potential to protect their jobs as developers and to try to push out the undesirable elements that have been happening.
Now, I've been watching a little bit of QuidsUp, and you even mentioned him too, so we want to give QuidsUp a shout out. Good to see that you're covering this, and he's covering this in a little bit more detail than I've had time to be able to do. So kudos to him for doing this. Apparently, the situation that we have right now is the author of the Code of Conduct, okay, apparently is not even abiding by this Code of Conduct herself, or is it himself, or is this a transgendered species we're speaking about? Not profiling anybody, mind you, but all these agendas that they're bringing to the table is really stirring a bunch of people up. Okay, the code is basically giving people an outline of how they're supposed to behave, but the author of this document isn't even abiding by the rules.
Yeah, I've read the entire Code of Conduct, the new one and the old one in its entirety, and looking at the document itself, there's not much wrong with it. I mean, there are a few small areas that I take issue with, because it seems like it eliminates the merit system, and it's no longer about but basically it's more about behavior than it is skill, which in an inclusive workplace you kind of need a little bit of that. So when I look at the Code of Conduct on its own, it's not that big of a deal. There's a few small things in it, but I won't get into that. The problem is that it's being used as a divisive tool against people in a political fashion, and that's where the controversy is coming from. The person that wrote the Code of Conduct has, you can find this person's Twitter page, and you can read the comments that this person has been saying. She's been leaving comments along the lines of she can't wait, or for the mass exodus of the Linux development and user community. The SJWs have won, ha ha. She also at one point said that there wasn't, that there were too many cisgender white males in the development community, and we need to aim to change that. And if this Code of Conduct is about inclusiveness, then she certainly isn't following her own rules. It seems like she's pushing a political agenda, and that's where a lot of this controversy is coming from. And it seems to me like the developers really don't want to go along with it.
So now I can understand why, they want to be able to, okay, if you're gonna burn me, I'm taking my code with me. Okay, I understand the reasoning behind it, and I say good for you. If you can do it, do it. If they're going to, because the thing is, these people earned those positions. They worked hard for many years, many of them alongside Linus Torvalds himself. They've worked very hard on these projects. They're in the positions that they're in because they earned them the old-fashioned way by working hard at it. And yes, I do realize, that maybe they have not always had the best behavior, but the end result was that we have a modern work of human genius, and we have one idiot in the community who's trying to disrupt that. Okay? If anything, I think we need to make the author of that code of conduct accountable, and that author should, abide by those rules themselves. Or, the way I see this playing, Linus may very well step in and just, get rid of the person that wrote the code of conduct using a few choice words that I won't use on the Cup of Linux show. But that's what I see happening, unless he's completely aware of this going on, and then, oh my goodness. But all I see is a big can of worms that has opened up here. And I don't know. The media is having a circus with this because everybody's getting riled up about it. I'm sitting back with a bowl of popcorn and I'm enjoying the show.
Yeah, pretty much. But what I find interesting is that a lot of these people have referred to the old document as the Code of Conflict, but this new document has created far more conflict among the community and developers that the old one ever has. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't understand that, a lot of these people in the development community, they're very, very intelligent people. People like Linus and the people that he has working around him, they are extremely intelligent. And a lot of times, people that are up on that level, people that have that level of genius, don't have very good social skills. Linus is a perfect example of this. He is very passionate about the kernel. He wants it to be good. You come up to him and give him a piece of code that he thinks is garbage. He tells you this is effing garbage. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't, he just tells you like it is. The problem with that is that some people might be a little more sensitive than others, and they can't handle that type of criticism. So it is a problem to some degree, but you also have to kind of take away. I don't believe for any second that Linus's comments that he's made over the years, or anyone else's, has ever been used on a personal level. A lot of it is just straight up off the cuff reactions to what they see, given lack of social skills that people of that level of intelligence usually possess. I've never once saw any indication that any of the brash comments made by him or anyone else were ever personally chosen as, personal attacks against any one individual. It was simply just, not all-inclusive language used to describe something that they didn't like, or, the one that he is pretty much famous for is his that conference he was in, and he looked at the camera and says, "NVIDIA F you." Well, I took that as a joke. I thought it was hilarious, but apparently not everyone felt the same way. So when you are a public figure and you are under public scrutiny all the time, anything that you say, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, can be used against you. And people in the development community, now that Linux is growing in popularity all over the world, they need to keep that in mind. Public scrutiny is always going to be there. So sometimes you got to put on a filter. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to bend over to the agenda or the desires that these so-called SJWs are pushing, because, to be frank, they're on the opposite side of the spectrum. You have Linus and the developers on one side of the extreme. these people, these liberal SJWs are on the other side of the extreme. There has to be some middle ground somewhere. And, people need to filter their speech on both sides for that purpose. It should never be used as a tool against someone else or a community or anyone with a different set of political views or opinions. Things really could change in the community as far as language goes and all inclusiveness, but it doesn't have to be a political movement. I think that is the absolute wrong way to take it, and I think it's dividing a lot of people.
A number of people read my last video on this topic in the wrong way because, I stated that having a code of conduct in place, has potential to bring positive change. I did not, and I repeat, I did not emphasize that I am in any kind of agreement with social justice warrior tactics and agendas and that sort of thing. I mentioned that I admired Linus Torvalds in doing what he did. He admitted he was wrong, and he's taken the step, and he's now taking the steps to correct that wrong. I can relate to that myself, being a recovered alcoholic and drug addict, and I'm still making amends for the wreckage of my past, mostly indirect amends, but still. So I can understand completely where he's coming from. And now, Matthew, you've worked in fields. I know you've worked in auto mechanics. I've worked in the construction trade. And believe me, when you're out there on the job site and you're working with other people, believe me, those people on those work crews are potty mouths, even when I was in the United States Navy. Okay, goodness, the potty mouth I had when I was that age. And, so it was nothing to, tell people F off and that sort of thing, and they'd still respect you at the end of the day. You don't have people at each other's throats killing each other and that sort of thing. It's a good idea they have rules in place. I'm not arguing that point. But the drama, and I'm guessing that most of this drama is stemming from one person and their cohorts. And there was another YouTube show host I was watching earlier today, and I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he had a skull and crossbones on his video. I forget his name. It was a show that I hadn't seen before. But he was basically, guessing that it could be somebody wanting to see Linux come to an end. And this is the means to that end. I'm pretty sure Steve Ballmer is really enjoying everything that's going on right now. If we allow this to continue, could this potentially be the end of Linux as we know it? If we lose all these developers, I imagine the GNU Herd project is really going to get a boost.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do for everyone, users, developers alike, is to find some common ground on, whatever it is, because the more that we indulge in this drama, the more we become divided, the more conflict that ensues. And, united we stand, divided we fall. So we need to ignore all of the negativity. We need to ignore the people trying to use a positive thing in a negative way, like this code of conduct. We just need to push out the undesirable stuff and find common ground and agree on what we want Linux to be and what we want the community to be, and just move in that direction. And anything else that comes in to try to, push us off the tracks, we just ignore that. We just need to find some common ground with each other. I know historically, developers of certain distributions of certain communities to users, there's always been some degree of elitism in certain communities, and there's always been some conflict with people with different opinions. Different opinions are going to happen. You can't avoid it. But I think if we're going to be a strong community, we need to identify what we really want the community and what Linux to be. And we just need to focus on that. Everything else around it is just, it doesn't matter. Just push it out of your mind. Don't even worry about it. It's just nonsense. And I think if we approach it in that way, I think we'll be all right.
The thing is, if they do draft up a code of conduct, okay, it needs to ignore anyone who is involved. It needs to ignore anything that they've done in the past and give everybody a clean slate, an even clean slate to start on, with the full understanding that, anything they do from this point forward, which violates this code, can potentially lead to some sort of disciplinary action. And there needs to be reasonable consequences for infractions of said code. Just dismissing somebody because, they made a slip of the tongue is utter and complete nonsense. And the person who wrote the code needs to lead by example. And if he or she or it can't do that, then they need to step aside and let somebody else, take over this thing. And I even understand that this person isn't even at some level of authority. So who the heck is this person in the first place? Just somebody who likes stirring up drama? Come on!
I've written a code of conduct. Would you like to hear it?
Actually, I read it and I thought it was awesome. I read it on the Quids Up channel. Don't be a dick.
Yep, that's the entire code of conduct.
That is perfect. You have my seal of approval on that one. Although I really probably shouldn't even be using that language on my channel. But yeah, I like it. I love it.
It's simple and it's to the point. The Matthew Moore Code of Conduct. Don't be a dick. That's all.
But I love it. Matthew, yeah, that is the perfect code of conduct. And it would probably solve all the problems that the community is having. So I'm in 100% agreement with you there.
It's simple. It's easy to understand. It's in plain English. I mean, I think it'll work just fine.
And it's only 4 words, so I mean, I imagine it could be translated very easily in many different languages.
Oh yeah, I could probably do that in an afternoon.
Don't even, maybe 10 minutes using Google Translate.
Yeah.
Well, I think we solved the problem, so there's your new code of conduct. Don't be a dick. Any final thoughts, Matthew, before we wrap this up?
No, I think don't be a dick is pretty much all I got to say.
Well, then don't be a dick, and I'll catch you next time. Until then, peace out.
Later.